So today, Loraine, the wonderful Loraine from PurpleSpace, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, huge pleasure. We've been so excited. We've kidnapped you. We're in a taxi.
Yes, I know.
Even Patrick said Lorraine's really important.
Oh no! And the irony is, I think they've got me in a taxi, and I'm all about rail. But anyway, it's all good.
We have our seatbelts on, though. Look, Lorraine, all about safety.
So, Loraine, we are, as you know, we've joined forces with Valuable 500, Purple Light Up, PurpleSpace, and Caroline and I often talk about top-down, bottom-up approach to change. We've been watching and observing what Network Rail have been doing for a long time. And I suppose what we'd love to hear is your thoughts about why we're seeing a tipping point, particularly when it comes to the leadership. What are you seeing?
I think there are a number of things, but specifically, I think we have worked really hard to increase the awareness of disability in our organisation, both from the point of view of our employees and from the point of view of the passengers that we serve. And I think the advent of, or the arrival of Andrew Haynes over the last year has really helped to elevate that, primarily because he's put us into thinking about putting the passenger first. And that's a fantastic lens through which to look at who encounters the most barriers to our transport system. Disabled people, older people. So what could we do differently in order to make sure that experience of travel is much, much better? So I think we laid the foundations, talking about our physically built environment, thinking about how we can get disabled people and disabled passengers to inform our designs and how we do things. And I think that the next step change that you're witnessing is about a bit more confidence in our own capacity to do things better, but also openness, because we don't always get it right. And continually building on the lessons of what we can do for our passengers, and that's driven both by our leadership but also by our employees. So we have an employee network called Can Do. I'm sporting a t-shirt today. Who are really fantastic. They're like a litmus test for us to understand what we're doing well, what needs to improve. And I think it's a composite of the leadership at the top, but also the leadership from the ground that is working well at the moment.
And you see that tipping point.
And that's the tipping point. The tipping point has been it takes a while to get there. So we had a campaign over about 18 months around reasonable adjustments or workplace adjustments. We put in a navigator toolkit, which was to help managers have the conversations around reasonable adjustments. And we also had a series of case studies for individuals showing what we can do at our best. And I think that's given people a bit more confidence, both to share their information. Actually, this is my condition, this is my impairment. But also to have a bit more confidence that we would be a responsive and responsible employer.
Wonderful.
And so that, I think that gives people more confidence then to stretch us even more.
Wonderful.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
How many passengers do you have?
We have about 4 million a day.
Sorry, how many?
4 million.
A day?
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the things I was just listening to you talking about there is that you don't always get it right. So is there a culture now in your organisation where it's allowing you to experiment, to take the risk, to get it wrong? Nobody's going to get slapped on the hands, because one of the things that we often find with companies is they're so worried about getting it wrong so they don't try. So where has that come from, that culture? Has that come from the top of the organisation, or
I think it comes from a groundswell of commitment to diversity and inclusion as your first point and principle. So we want to be a more open, diverse and inclusive organisation. We want to welcome all of the talent in all of its shapes, all of its sizes in the organisation. So we've been driving that strategic commitment for some time. And then I think you get some people who are, I want to say iconic, but not so much iconic, but are pivotal in their roles. They're really helpful, and you have learning moments in your organisation. And one of the things that we had, which I think gave us confidence, was around some of the poor experiences that some of our passengers have had, and our receptiveness, which is better now, to saying, actually, you know what, we can do better.
Not being
engaging
defensive.
and trying not to be defensive. Which is, as you said, Caroline, is the default position. Oh my God, we got that wrong. Oh, this is really terrible. And it is terrible, but it's more systemic than the individual interaction. It requires lots of activities and lots of different responses from us as a business. So I think what we're more confident, and we're not always there, it is inconsistent, but we're more confident to put things right. and to acknowledge that actually we didn't do that better, and then to look wider and say, well, actually, what's the key issue to that? Is it around training. For our employees?
Yeah.
Is it that actually a series of things, including technology or information, just didn't work? And really understand those things and try and be a bit more systematic about our approach.
Because I'm a visually impaired, obviously I'm registered legally blind, and I think for me, actually stations and travelling by rail is difficult.
Yes.
It's because you can never see anything.
There's too much.
There's just an awful lot going on.
Yes, that's right.
And one of the things I think that is a barrier for people with disabilities to work is transport.
Yes.
But listening to you talking about it, you're not really just talking about people with disabilities as a niche, you're just talking about really good customer service.
That's where we're getting
right?
to. That's where we're getting to, Caroline. So for us to understand that as an institution, it's a journey, and proverbial journey. But it is about saying, if we put the passenger first, put ourselves in the position of what passengers experience, and also speak to passengers, then we get a better sense of what they want, what's really good, and also what you can do when it doesn't go so well, so that both being apologetic and saying, actually, we're going to learn from this and we're going to do something better. So that's the direction of travel. I guess for us, the litmus test would be the consistency that people get in right across the whole business.
And I do think that's about training, because just going back to the fact, when I'm travelling, it's when somebody's trained properly, or they're not frightened to get it wrong. So they're treating me as a human, not as a visually impaired passenger.
Correct.
And I'm sitting there going, because by the way, all of our lived experience, Kate and my lived experience of disability is entirely different, and actually the same for on the spectrum of sight.
Absolutely.
So it's just allowing your people to feel that they're seeing you as a passenger and as a human first, not as being frightened of it. And I think that's key, isn't it?
And in our training, we use disabled people to support that training, so that we do say, and I think I heard you say, Caroline, and you, Kate, when you meet one disabled passenger, that's one disabled passenger, and it's not to have a blanket approach. And that gives people a bit more confidence to say, oh, actually, I can interact with you and I can find out about what you need and how I can help you, as opposed to, you look like this, and I'm going to assume a certain set of requirements go alongside whatever you're presenting a situation is.
It's wonderful.
And it's wonderful, and it's still a challenge, because we are wanting to provide a really, really great service, and sometimes we don't always get it right, in a rush, or there's lots of different pressures that may impact on that. But I think the direction of travel and the common messages that we're giving out to everyone in Network Rail is about putting our passengers first.
I like it. Loraine, moving on to networks. I mean, you're such a supporter of employee resource groups and networks.
But were they not one of the very first to join Purple Light Up and PurpleSpace?
We talk about early adopters, and Network Rail was an early adopter of PurpleSpace. And your can-do network is second to none. Absolutely superb.
They will be so happy to hear that.
Just
credit where it's due.
No, honestly, it's fantastic to hear that. Thank you.
So tell me why you value the network so much. I mean, we talk a lot about learning directly from disabled people, nothing about us without us, or as Yasmin over in Canada says, nothing without us.
Full stop.
Full stop.
Absolutely,
End of.
absolutely.
So tell us why it's so important to you, Andrew, the leadership team, to learn directly from the Can Do Network.
I mean, I think for me as an individual, I really believe that it's important to have the person's experience of what it's like to be different in an environment.
Yeah.
So I think oftentimes we can make the mistake of assuming that we know what's right for people.
Yeah.
And I think listening is a really important skill in terms of developing both individuals and your business. And so when I joined Network Rail, one of the things that I felt was really important was, how do we tap into that resource?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do we understand what it's like to be disabled in our organisation, and what can we do better? And so it's that process of opening up and giving permission for people to speak up and say, right, this is our experience, and this is what you've done really, really well, and this is what you've done less well. And I think we've tried to be open about that and really respond positively, and not make that the individual the problem, but the circumstance and the system and the way that we do things that needs to change. And that takes time, and it takes time because often think we're experts. We know what other people need, and some of us are medics, and we've not been qualified, but we can diagnose certain situations.
Yeah, true.
And it's trying to still those voices and those biases that we have, and say, actually, what is the individual asking for, and what do they need?
Wonderful.
And then looking at our responsibilities as a responsible employer to say, well, actually, if we draw those people together, they are a fantastic resource for us. They can do all of our networks, and we've got 6 of them. They're a litmus test for what we do well.
Yeah.
They help with our policy.
Yeah.
They're a site for consultation.
Yeah.
And what we've seen is, and it's an unintended consequence, is the growth in those people that are active.
That inner confidence.
Their confidence, their competence. They get promotion. They go on to bigger and better things.
Yeah.
And that is, for us, is great. So it's a site for development. It's a site for enablement, and it's a site for us to improve. And that's why I think all of our employee resources networks are really crucial to our approach.
I'm loving that link though that you make to the intelligence in your business allows you to serve the passenger.
Well, it's interesting,
great, right?
You look at some of the great brands out there, like Microsoft, and the position of Jenny Leigh Florey.
Yeah.
It's no coincidence that she was a network leader once upon a time.
No.
Or you think about Sam Latif from Procter and Gamble.
Yes.
So
Just Sam Phillips, who we've just had in. Exactly the same thing.
So great stuff. I know Caroline has one last question about the value of leadership, and then we'll let you go into the station.
Oh, fantastic.
Well, I think we've kind of really touched Andrew Haynes, and how important that's been, and making sure that, but leadership isn't just leadership at the top of the business, it's leadership throughout and empowering people to lead. I just wondered, what do you think has been the most, if you had a critical success factor? Because you really are you're leading in this space, and so what do you think has been one of the most important things for you?
I think being open and receptive to different voices. We are a service company, and we exist to help people get from A to B, and for your goods to get from A to B safely and on time. And the more that we can give you a quality experience, the more that your confidence grows, that you can use our services, the more that money churns around the organisation and the business, the better our infrastructure, the better our service. So there is a fantastic cycle, but it starts with our openness and receptiveness to having different inputs and different intelligence inform what we do.
We love you.
Oh, thank you. We love you.
We love you.
We love you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
for joining us today, and we'll see you on the Purple
Thank you.
Airwaves.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you very much.